Okey doke. Sleeping Beauty, a mid-century fairy tale. And as we read, I want you to think about what changes this author made to Sleeping Beauty. And I want you to pay attention to how they wrap the story together so that the changes make sense, the same way that you're doing in writing. Sleeping Beauty and some robots. In a time not too long ago, and in a land much like our own, there was a happy young girl called Annabelle. She lived with her two aunts, Rosalind and Flora. Annabelle loved science fiction and spent hours dreaming of the future, unaware that she was living under an evil spell that could mean she had no future at all. On Annabelle's first birthday, something had happened to change her future forever. All the neighbors were invited to a party, but one of them was a mean and spiteful witch called Morwenna. She was jealous of Rosalind, Flora, and the beautiful baby Annabelle. So she set out to spoil the fun. All the guests fussed over baby Annabelle and gave her gifts. They were having a wonderful time until Morwenna stepped forward. "Here's my gift," she cried, casting a spell. "Before her 16th birthday is over, she will prick her finger on a needle and die." In a flash, Morwenna disappeared, leaving behind only the echo of an evil laugh. Mwah, ha, 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 ha. Rosalind cried in despair, afraid that she could do nothing to stop the evil spell from coming true. But Flora, who was a good and kind witch, said, "Morwenna is powerful and her spell is strong. I can't take the spell away, but I can change it. If Annabelle pricks her finger, she will not die, but instead she'll just sleep for 1,000 years." To avoid upsetting Rosalind further, Flora kept a secret. Morwenna's spell was so strong that if Annabelle was not woken at exactly midnight on the last day of the 1,000 years, she would indeed die. You guys notice the changes that the author has made? Rosalind removed every needle from their home and kept a careful watch over Annabelle. Oblivious to her fate, Annabelle spent her time reading space books and watching TV. She marveled at the films and stories about science and robots. She often thought that if she could wish for anything, it would be to see the world as it is in the future. Anybody else want to see the world in the future? Annabelle's 16th birthday arrived. Rosalind was so relieved that Annabelle would be 16 and the spell would be lifted that she let her guard down and she did not notice that a large present wrapped in shiny paper had been delivered to the house. Annabelle excitedly tore off the paper. Inside was a record player. This was something Annabelle had desperately wanted, but had not been allowed to have. It must be a surprise gift from my aunts, she thought happily. But it wasn't from her aunts. Morwenna had left the gift, and she spied through the windows as Annabelle put the record on. In her excitement, Annabelle pricked her finger on the needle. In an instant, she fell to the floor, asleep. The spell had come true. When Rosalind found Annabelle, she was inconsolable. How will I protect her? I can't watch over her for 1,000 years. And she sobbed. But Flora had an idea. Rosalind, become a rose. Do not shed any tears. Grow with magic, grow with love. Guard Annabelle for 1,000 years. In a shimmer of golden light, Rosalind began to change. She became a rose tree, which grew and grew. Out of the windows and doors, thick vines and thorns, entwined to leave no sign of what lay beneath. Flora wrote down the story so that it would never be forgotten. She called it Sleeping Beauty. She then turned herself into a light, so Annabelle was not in darkness. Many, many years went by, and the world saw many changes, but the rose tree remained. 1,000 years passed, and a young girl called Zoe was researching the history of the giant rose tree. She wondered why it stood when everything around it had changed so much. She set off to the library to find out more. In the library, Zoe found a collection of very old and dusty books. She loved books and history and finding out what life used to be like. She often thought that if she could wish for anything, it would be to see the world as it was in the past. Anybody else wish they could see the world in the past? See some people shaking their head no. Zoe found a book with a rose on the cover. It was called Sleeping Beauty. As she looked through the pages, she became convinced that the story was true. When she saw that it was exactly 1,000 years to the day since it was written, she took the book and she ran from the library. Off she rushed to the rose tree as fast as she could. She had just a few hours until midnight to help Sleeping Beauty. At the rose tree, Zoe fought her way through the vines, crawling over giant thorns and brushing aside enormous petals. Time ticked by, and in the gloom, Zoe was lost. Suddenly, in the distance, she saw a light. It was Flora's light, and it led Zoe to the house hidden deep within the great rose. Opening the door, she was amazed at what she saw. "It's like a museum," she said, going into each room. On opening the last door, she saw the girl asleep. "Sleeping Beauty," she whispered. As the clock began to strike midnight, she reached out and touched the sleeping girl's hand. As their fingers met, Annabelle's eyes opened. "I feel like I've been asleep for ages," she said. "I hope I haven't missed my 16th birthday." Zoe stared at her. No, you haven't missed your birthday, but you are definitely not 16. You're 1016. You're the youngest looking oldest person ever," she exclaimed. And Zoe sat down beside Annabelle. She showed her the book and she told her the whole tale. Annabelle laughed and cried as she realized her life, as she knew it, was gone. She looked at the shining light and the rose tree that had once surrounded her house as it slowly receded to one small bud. "Thank you, my dear aunts," she whispered. "You kept me safe for 1,000 years." Annabelle's sadness turned to excitement, and she ran to the door, desperate to see what the world was like. "Come on," she said, taking Zoe's hand. "Show me the future." And they stepped out together into the bright morning sunshine. The end.